One of my first jobs as a counselor, I experienced a very good example of what Ken might call flatland psychiatry. And I've worked with some wonderful psychiatrists, but this particular person, I had several clients suffering from various severe mental and emotional disorders, and two of my clients were diagnosed and met the criteria for schizophrenia, paranoid subtype. And the doctor that I was working with at this time didn't even talk to the clients. He said, I want you to come in with your clients, and then he would sit there and he would say, is this the man who recently tore apart the rec room? Is this the man who relapsed and spent a month in the hospital? And so on and so forth. And any attempts to direct the psychiatrist to the actual patient who was sitting right there were met with the shame-inducing type of look that at that point in my career I succumbed to quite easily. But what was interesting to me was particularly these two clients, and the first one, we were just talking, and he was on medication, but it wasn't working. And his experience of paranoia, I was just talking with him, and I had a pen in my hand, and at one point he says, you point that pen at me one more time, I'm going to rip your lungs out. I was like, well, just set that here. Okay. And the other gentleman, he would want to go through all the books I had on my shelf and my desk and check for microphones, and he would say that there's a term in the CIA called useful idiot, and it's for a person who doesn't really know they're working for the CIA, and I've pegged you as a useful idiot, and so I'm checking, because I think that this whole office is bugged. So I'd let him check, and we'd go on with the session.
I also suspected that was true.
Those calls from Homeland Security were not lost on Willow. Well, what was interesting, and one of the things that Ken's theory has really opened out for me and Suzanne's work is the appreciation of development and how we can start to conceptualize this with clients. I had two clients that I just referred to who, while they suffered from very similar symptoms, they saw the world very differently. And when they were, quote-unquote, stabilized, when they were able to make psychological contact, their view of the world was quite different. How many folks had a chance to do the pre-reading that we sent out? Okay, oh, wow, wonderful. This is great. So one gentleman, when we think of levels of ego identification, he really saw the world, he identified with an impulsive view of the world. It's me against them, and I have to just make sure I get what I need and I guard against threats. The other person held a master's degree in history and saw the world really from kind of an exit conscientious point of view, had a wonderful rational capacity, but was also beginning to contemplate the different perspectives he himself experienced when he was suffering relapses. But I didn't have any words for this, and development, while it's supposed to be important in the psychotherapy professions, I had one course on human development. It was a survey course. So many of these concepts really center around development, and Willow and I will be talking about them more in the self-system module. But ladder climber view is a metaphor we're going to talk about a lot this week. And the idea is that what Ken has forged and what integral theory is aiming at a comprehensive map, as Willow noted. And a comprehensive map has to look at the models we have. And we have a lot of models that have support from different types of research. So we need a map that basically says, well, if this model is supported, how does it fit into the map? And so the praxis piece, the tools and the concepts we're trying to impart are based on that. Ladder climber view, the ladder is you could think of it as the developmental impulse. You could think of it as the evolutionary impulse. Some people don't like the metaphor of a ladder because they think it might be easily misused in a hierarchical sense to put some people on certain rungs in a pejorative place. And the key thing to remember is that what we're talking about, the rungs, they are altitude, that's what we're going to call them. And whatever a person's altitude, they're all important, they're all useful, they're just capacities. As Jeff noted, the climber is the self-system. Now, where developmental theories offer us ways to structure and understand the ladder, many of our psychodynamic theories have forged the path for understanding the self-system. And we know from experimental evidence that we can push things out of awareness to the point where they're unconscious. Any model of the self system has to be able to encompass that. And the climber, how does that relate to the climber's altitude and the climber's transformation to different altitudes? And again, we're going to talk about that in several ways this week. The view is what you see from whatever altitude you're at, whatever rung you're at. The first client I talked about saw threats everywhere, and not without reason in many cases. That was what he was cued into. That was what he saw. The second client saw things from a rational perspective, but was also wonderful and very talented at weaving conspiracy theories because of his keen intellect and his ability to put these things together in a rational way, to what was to him rational way. So the views, which we'll come back to this, but the views are transitory. And the rungs are capacities that we retain, and that's very important. And we will come back to it. The sliding nature of self is simply that as our altitude changes, then the way we experience life, the way we metabolize things, that also changes. And the types of things that we push out of awareness that are threatening to us also change. So the dynamics remain the same, but the content of that which is gratifying or that which is threatening changes. And without a sliding sense of self-identification, you have a static model which simply doesn't account for the way people grow and the new perspectives people grow into, and how to honor that and how to bring that into the session in a way that's a little more concrete. And I'm a big one on concrete. I kind of refer to myself as the 3-chord guy. I like everything. I like the 3-chord version. Give me an opera, I'll give you a 3-chord version of it. You can start there. But I want something I can use in a session. And so that's my aim with a lot of these.
You are listening to www.interawaken.org.